Denis Villeneuve's Dune has finally released on home video with its DVD, Blu-ray and 4K formats, and along with it comes a range of special features that includes interviews, artwork and details from the production of the science fiction epic. We get looks at the process of building the sandworms, the ornithopters, and the large-scale sets that have become classic since the release of the film. In this video, I'm going to be sharing the biggest details from these featurettes and adding my own thoughts towards it as a sort of celebration of the film's home entertainment release. You can buy this on physical media now, and its rollout will be coming to other countries over the next few months. But before I get into it, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding Dune Part 1, Part 2 and beyond, then don't forget to support this video by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's dive into the behind the scenes featurettes from Dune. So in the collection of behind the scenes footage, director Denis Villeneuve, editor Joe Walker, composer Hans Zimmer, cinematographer Greg Fraser, and much of the cast break down their work on the production, the inspiration that went into everything they crafted, and the simply astonishing work that came out of it. Coming along with this is new artwork from the pre-production stages, footage of them working to craft the iconic scenes, and interviews that explain their process. This involves the building of their Arrakis, the Ornithopter, the Sandworm, the transcending score by Hans Zimmer, and the supporting sounds that bring the world to life. So let's get into what was discussed and shown in the individual featurettes. We start with the designing of the desert planet Arrakis, along with the construction of the Arrakeen city that the Atreides take residence at. The first featurette, titled My Desert, My Dune, explores the long and arduous process Villeneuve went through to bring his vision of Dune to life. In the video, Villeneuve says that Dune took years to be made because it was a challenge to respect the spirit of Frank Herbert's book and bring it to the big screen. After the previous adaptations, Dune has been considered unfilmable. That is, until Villeneuve split the book into two and brought a beautiful and vibrant vision of the first half to theatres last year. To achieve the critically acclaimed result of Dune, the director focused on the design of a world that felt alive. In his words, "Maybe the most important thing of all, I wanted the design to be inspired by nature. The light, the wind, the dust, feel that these were natural environments." Villeneuve of course achieved this, capturing the beautiful sand dunes featured in the film and constructing as much as he could in camera. In the featurette, director of photography Greg Fraser describes how he helped Villeneuve to build the exact world he wanted. As Fraser explains, from a colour perspective, Denis wanted Arrakis to be harsh and desolate. The main shooting location for Dune was also chosen by Villeneuve 10 years prior to the film's production when he was on a trip to Jordan. As he puts it, when he first saw Jordan's desert, he decided that if he ever made Dune, the rock formations of that desert would be the perfect place to bring Arrakis to life. With the Arrakeen city, for instance, they aimed to create a monument with it, making it feel and look like it was populated and a character itself. They built a low resolution of the city in visual effects so that Denis could walk around the area and put together how he wanted it to all situate and look, along with practice camera angles that would later be featured in the film. City elements were also shot in Budapest on a soundstage with sand screens, such as the Atreides' arrival, to get the right lighting and colouring. But the director makes it clear that a lot was shot on location, striving to get as close to nature itself. And as he further explains here, this film is all about that. And the second behind the scenes video puts a big emphasis on this, showcasing the massive real-world sets used for the film, including the Atreides base we see throughout much of their early time on the planet. These were constructed under the watchful eye of production designer Patrice Vermette. From the palaces of Caladan to these desert structures on Arrakis, Villeneuve is a strong believer in building the real-world sets, saying, "You must build as much as possible, because it will influence the acting, it will influence the imagination of the actors, it will influence myself as a director." The filmmaker used a combination of sets and real-world locations that helped make the world feel as real as possible, which translated exceptionally well to the big screen. They describe Caladan in the film as a medieval castle surrounded by nature, lush in comparison to the harsh landscape of Arrakis. They designed these locations to stimulate that effect, making the audience feel just like Paul, who has to adjust to a new form of architecture and a whole new planet. The Atreides keep is built the way it is, as described in the featurette as almost like a bunker with thick walls and huge spaces to protect those from the nature outside. And inside it, we get a better look at the art and images of murals such as the Sandworms that describe the culture of the planet and its godlike nature. The rooms, such as Paul's, also relate and convey the character, like with the crushing pillars below and on top of his own bed. It was being creative with space, staying in line with a building that could stand the force of nature, but also one that expressed characterization through brutalist structures, both wide and crushing in their shapes. They then further go into the creation of Liet Kyne's lab and how that used equipment designed in a way that had to feel like this hadn't been seen before and that it was quite alien. And there's also the support of ancient writings on the wall in these very structures, almost embedded within, giving us a reverse tone to this alien feel. It's described as if there was knowledge built up over a long period of time, but one that also feels unusual. What we learn is that they essentially strive to create something that felt familiar, but also something that hadn't been seen before. And speaking of a particular moment that was translated well to the screen with its design, the next special feature gave us an in-depth look at the Sandworm, the spice harvester, and how they went about filming it all. Starting with the Sandworm featurette, although the physical design of the sandworms is outstanding, the most important decision is quite easy to look past. The sandworms in Dune are not presented as simple monsters, an outcome that has more to do with sound than the overall look. That was difficult as it was, taking a lot of time building out 3D models of the creature and how it would move through the mountains of sand. In the feature, supervising sound editors Mark Mangin and Theo Green discuss a pivotal moment in their process of designing the beasts, where it took months to even just build the scales, the mouth, and communicating thumps that it produces in its final scene. Mark Mangin said that they began the sound design process to create a massive, frightening beasts, but Denis made it clear to them earlier on that this would be a moment of reverence for a beautiful being. They very quickly had to disconnect from the Godzilla effect, and in the pivotal scene where Paul encounters the sandworm in the open desert, they decided that this would be a moment where there's a silent contemplation between the two of them, something that seemed very unusual. They said, "It's not a monster coming out of the sand, it's a meeting with a god." And when it comes to the spice harvester scene, where the worm is introduced to us for the very first time, there was a lot that had to be done from an art and timing perspective. They show us drawings of the harvester in early planning, and also storyboards that specifically time how this sequence would play out. They didn't want to overdo the effects and money pumped into it, letting the scene be driven by the characters who are experiencing this for the very first time. But when we do get the eventual sandworm and shots of the harvester leading up to it, it had to be visually impressive. They again focused on the practical, pulling Paul and Gurney up on a crane and ramp above the desert to give that overlooking shot all the scale it needed. Denis explains that there was a lot of choreography and correct timing needed to achieve the now classic scene, as it's one that doesn't rely on the dialogue, but rather the visual imagery we get. This is something I said in my video essay on this scene a while back, and I must say, to this day, it's still my favourite sequence from Dune Part 1. Seeing the behind the scenes footage just helps to elevate how great of a scene it is. Then comes the construction of the Ornithopters, the insect-like vehicle that was filmed using in-camera practical shots, along with clever tricks using real-world helicopters and added special effects. The Ornithopter is in fact supposed to make you believe that it's a real aircraft. As revealed, Denis Villeneuve was adamant that the aircraft be seen as something we might have in our own world. The collaboration between the director and production designer Patrice Vermette was integral to presenting this piece of world building as convincingly as they could. Denis said to Patrice, "I want them to look as real as possible. I want my mother to believe that this thing can fly for real. I want it to feel muscular. I don't want it to be necessarily elegant. I want it to be like a bulky and powerful machine that looks like a military helicopter." With this in mind, the director pushed the design away from a bird and more towards an insect. Several ornithopters were built for the film, with the average one having a wingspan of 129 feet. And although these aircrafts were real, the only thing that needed to be added was the wings and reflections in CG. The reflections in the windows did involve using real footage of the desert though. But there was a lot of work done in animation with the wings to get a range of motion as to how the ornithopters fly. And like suggested before, the movement of their bodies across the landscapes was captured using the movement of helicopters, which were replaced with the body of an ornithopter in VFX. When it comes to designs, everything had its own inspiration, and the costumes also shared this methodology. For House Atreides, Timothée Chalamet was outfitted in what Jacqueline West called medieval-rooted costumes drawn from Romanov paintings, tying in with the idea of the end of a dynasty. The desert tribe of the Fremen had clothing that resembled ancient nomads, as well as the films of David Lean. The elegant yet simple silk gowns worn by Lady Jessica were modelled off paintings by Goya, plus the work of Spanish icons. And you might find the look of the Bene Gesserit in tarot cards and chess pieces. The evil Harkonnens were designed like insects, ant-like, with the leather textured to resemble a bug shell. These all had different colour palettes too, to separate the individual royal houses, as Robert Morgan states in the Featurette. Then there were the still suits worn in the harsh desert, with each character needing a bespoke outfit that could stretch, move, and be moulded to fit their body types. To construct each one, nearly 150 individual pattern pieces needed to be crafted separately by artisans hired from across Europe. It was creating specialty costumes for every actor, and they worked tirelessly on prototypes and comprehensive designs before showing Villeneuve a single outfit. Again, this was all in the aim to create costumes that felt like they resonated in our history, but were also presenting new life with original choices. Costume designer Jacqueline West said that it was all in Denis' aim to make something beyond the run-of-the-mill science fiction film, relating more to the innovative work of films in this genre back in the past. They wanted to bring this with intricacy and contribute to the scope and inspiration that this type of science fiction film can bring. And we come now to the fighting styles and some of the action involved, where we got features for the Sardaukar battles with Duncan Idaho and the early training room scene between Paul Atreides and Gurney Halleck. According to Chalamet, the very first thing he filmed for Dune was Paul's training scene with Gurney. In the training room feature, Chalamet reveals that it was his first 3 days and that Josh Brolin was mainly in charge, having done combat sequences like that. True to the nature of the scene, he's the weapons master and took the lead. For Brolin's part, it was however a very hard fight for him to learn, mostly because the style of fighting was more nuanced than the fighting he'd done in films before. The training room sequence itself may have taken 3 days to shoot, but the preparation and crafting of the styles in the film took much longer. Fight coordinator Roger Yoon based the style of House Atreides on a Filipino martial art called Kali, which the director describes as a cross between martial arts and fencing. Yuan says that because Chalamet had a background in both taekwondo and dance, he had a wonderful memory for choreography. But because Paul will be doing a lot more fighting in part 2, it will be these skills already learnt that he'll have to put to use once again to a much greater degree. It's interesting to note more on the fighting styles that supervising stunt coordinator Tom Struvers explained, who we learn put different people in charge of coming up with unique fighting styles for each of the major factions of Dune's story. Whether it be the Atreides, the more deadly Harkonnens, the desert-based Fremen, or the relentless Sardaukar. The Atreides battle techniques derive a lot from ancient Greek and Roman warfare, which makes sense since Frank Herbert elaborates in other books that their ancestry stretches back to that time. This Greek-derived fighting style can be seen clearly in the climactic battle towards the end of the movie, when Atreides soldiers are defending their stronghold from an invasion by joint Harkonnen and Sardaukar forces. And though Dune is set in the far future, technological advancements like the Holtzman shields make ancient weapons relevant again, since only a slow-moving blade can penetrate the protective shields worn by almost everyone. But focusing in on Duncan, we got a deeper look at the training behind his battle with the Sardaukar and how that was forged in more detail. Roger Yuan stated that it was about using Momoa's fighting strengths and abilities as a springboard, mixing the style of fighting they wanted to bring with moves that he recognised and could perform. It was almost like practicing a dance to perform, showing off the unique styles of these warriors. Duncan brought a heroic energy, a figure that Paul wishes he could be, and one that has a fighting style that reflects a kind of romanticism, but one that is still ruthless. It's using design, action, and imagery to forge characters out of this landscape. And finally, in probably the longest behind the scenes clip of them all, we got a great discussion with Hans Zimmer and the film's sound designers on how they went about creating the now award-winning sounds of Dune. In the 10-minute clip, they explain that they developed this soundscape while they were shooting the film and while editor Joe Walker was already putting together segments of the cut. Whether it be the sounds of the worm chase or the sounds of the Ornithopters, as the editor states in the footage. So it was all being simultaneously worked on and figured out, giving them a lot more time to put together the product they wanted. This reminds me of when Christopher Nolan had Hans Zimmer produce elements of the score for Interstellar before shooting, as it gave him notes to listen to while filming the material. With films like this, you have the opportunity to spend more time creating something that hasn't been heard before, and Dune had this going for it too. It's going for the mood and character development that Denis had in mind straight from the outset, and doing it in tandem gives you a bigger advantage at capturing that in a unique way. Some of these unique sounds involved creating the voice heard in the film, one that was almost a ghostly voice bringing out vocals from the character's ancestors. Another was capturing the sounds of the desert and thumpers, where they spent a whole day in the desert planting microphones underneath the sand to capture what we heard. It's methods and techniques like this that just highlight the greater push for something different that you don't see in much big budget films today. Joe Walker said that sometimes it's tempting to be flashy with sound. Make a spaceship the loudest and most powerful one you've ever heard. On the other hand, their aim was to make it feel as if they had really been there and recorded it, as if a documentary crew had a really good sound recordist. They had to design the sounds of other things like the worm and the ornithopter, but using the methods of capturing sounds like they did with the sand, this opened opportunities to capture the more alien and insect-like sounds from the film. It's balancing sound design with music, creating an almost fake reality that is believable. And speaking of the music, the featurettes then moved into the discussion with Hans Zimmer. Similar to the sound designers who spoke previously, Hans had experimented creating instruments to define a new musical language. It was the idea of going away from Western instruments in a sci-fi film and going for new ones to create a brand new soundscape. It even needed people to learn how to play instruments in a different way, says Zimmer, and they needed to combine a new sonic atmosphere with a thematic one. Every theme had a motif, being played at times in a romantic way, then in a tense way too. They also share extreme knowledge in understanding things like where the voice came from, how vocalists would perform them, and how this was built into the score to not just bring us unique music, but one that is motivated by what's on screen and has a true purpose within the film. And as we've explored throughout this recap of the behind the scenes, that seems to be what all the different departments were striving for. They created a unique universe with new approaches to science fiction cinema, ones that were also inspired and were the appropriate fit for Frank Herbert's Dune. But that was my video discussing all of the behind the scenes details and artwork shared in the home video featurettes for Denis Villeneuve's Dune. It's really cool to look at these differing elements surrounding the production because it showcases the length that they went to when filming some of this footage. And especially with some of the sets and the designs of the Sandworm, for instance, because this stuff is going to be more present in part 2. We've only just scratched the surface of how they will be extensively used. There were also 2 other featurettes on this disc, with the extended Royal Houses one and the Baron featurette, but because most of this was previously online, I focused mainly on the stuff that was new to this home video release. But again, I would recommend picking this up to see all the extended details, and after watching them myself, I really adore how they've kept everything as practically as possible, and in particular with the aspects that seemed almost impossible to do in a grounded fashion. The early concept art and behind the scenes footage really gives you a better indication of that process, and it makes me even more excited to see how they will evolve that over time with the upcoming projects in this universe. But let me know down below in the comment section what you thought towards these bonus features, alongside how you think they will raise the filming techniques and approaches with Dune Part 2. For much more videos and news on Denis Villeneuve's Dune universe, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.